I've been debating whether or not to post this for months. A couple of people told me to go to the police and forget about it. I did go to the police. They took a report, asked a lot of questions, collected what evidence I had, and that's pretty much where everything stopped. So now I'm posting it here because I honestly don't know what else to do with the story. This happened last October. My girlfriend Emily and I had been dating for a little over 3 years. We both worked stressful office jobs in Seattle, and after a particularly brutal month, she suggested we disappear for a long weekend somewhere without cell service. No internet. No emails. No notifications. Just trees, mountains, and silence. It sounded perfect. Emily found the cabin through a vacation rental app. The listing had only 22 reviews, but every single one gave it 5 stars. People kept calling it the perfect hidden escape. Completely isolated. Peaceful. Exactly what we needed. The pictures looked incredible. A small wooden cabin surrounded by pine trees, sitting beside a narrow lake. There wasn't another house visible in any direction. The nearest town was supposedly 45 minutes away. Exactly what we wanted. Looking back now, I remember one weird detail. The owner barely had any information on his profile. No personal picture. No biography. Just the name, Daniel. At the time, I didn't think twice about it. Lots of people value their privacy. 3 days before our trip, Daniel messaged us. The driveway is difficult to find after sunset. Please arrive before dark. Fair enough. Mountain roads are tricky. Then another message arrived a few minutes later. The cabin uses a keypad. I'll send your code the morning of your arrival. Please don't wander onto neighboring properties. That sentence stood out. Neighboring properties? The listing made it look like there weren't any neighbors for miles. Emily laughed. Maybe he's just worried people go hiking and get lost. I shrugged. Probably. The morning we left Seattle, the weather was perfect. Cold enough for jackets. Clear blue sky. The drive took nearly 6 hours. The farther we got from the city, the fewer cars we saw. Eventually our GPS stopped showing businesses. Then it stopped showing street names. By the last 30 minutes, we were driving on gravel roads surrounded by endless forest. No power lines. No houses. No signs. Nothing. Finally, we spotted a faded wooden post with a tiny metal number attached to it. The cabin's address. The driveway was barely wide enough for one vehicle. Branches scraped both sides of my truck as we crawled forward. Emily looked out the window. Are we sure this is it? I hope so. Another minute passed. Then the trees opened. The cabin appeared exactly like the listing photos. Small. Rustic. Beautiful. A wooden porch overlooked the lake. There was even a stack of firewood waiting beside the door. Everything looked untouched. Almost staged. I punched in the keypad code. The lock clicked immediately. Inside, everything smelled like fresh pine. The place was spotless. Too spotless. No dust anywhere. Not even on the windowsills. Emily smiled. I already love this place. So did I. At first. We unpacked our bags, stocked the refrigerator, and spent the afternoon walking around the lake. The silence was unbelievable. No airplanes. No traffic. No distant dogs barking. Nothing. It felt like we'd stepped into another world. That evening we cooked steaks on the porch while the sun disappeared behind the trees. For the first time in months, I felt relaxed. Emily looked happier than I'd seen her in a long time. If I could stay here forever, she said, I probably would. I laughed. Give it 2 days without Wi-Fi. She smiled. Maybe. After dinner we built a fire inside. The cabin had one large living room, a small kitchen, a bathroom, and a single bedroom. Simple. Cozy. Exactly what we expected. Around 10 that night, I noticed something odd. There was a smoke detector directly above the couch. Nothing unusual about that. Except there was another smoke detector on the opposite wall. And another one in the hallway. 3 smoke detectors within about 15 feet of each other. Emily noticed me staring. What? Doesn't that seem excessive? She looked around. Huh. I mean, maybe. I shrugged. It probably doesn't matter. If only I'd left it at that. Because the next morning, I found something that completely changed the way I looked at that cabin forever. The next morning, I woke up before Emily. For a few seconds I didn't remember where I was. The bedroom was dim and cold, with pale gray light leaking through the curtains. Outside, the trees barely moved. The lake was completely still. Then I heard it. A faint clicking sound. Not loud. Not constant. Just a soft little tick. Then silence. Then another tick. I sat up and listened. At first I thought it was the heater, or maybe the old wood settling as the cabin warmed up. But the sound was too sharp. Too mechanical. Tick. I looked around the bedroom. Nothing moved. Emily was asleep beside me, her face half buried in the blanket. Tick. This time, I realized it came from above us. I slowly looked up. There was a smoke detector mounted near the ceiling fan. Another one. I hadn't noticed it the night before. That made 4. I stared at it for almost a full minute. Then I got out of bed, dragged a chair beneath it, and climbed up. I don't know what I expected. A dead battery, maybe. A loose plastic cover. I twisted the smoke detector counterclockwise. It came off too easily. And behind it, there was no wiring. No battery. No sensor. Just a black circular hole in the wall. Inside the hole was a tiny glass lens. Pointing directly at the bed. For a second, my brain refused to understand what I was seeing. Then my stomach dropped so hard I almost fell off the chair. I climbed down, still holding the fake smoke detector in my hand. Emily. She didn't wake up. Emily. She opened her eyes slowly. What? I didn't say anything. I just held up the plastic cover. She blinked. Then saw my face. What is that? There's a camera behind it. She sat up fast. What? I pointed at the wall. She looked. Her expression changed in a way I'll never forget. Confusion first. Then fear. Then disgust. Are you serious? I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. There it was. A tiny lens hidden inside the wall cavity. No brand name. No wires visible from the front. Just a clean little black eye staring into the room. Emily wrapped the blanket around herself. Oh my God. I didn't know what to do first. Call someone? Pack? Break it? Check the rest of the cabin? The rational part of my brain said we needed to leave immediately. The angry part wanted to rip apart every inch of that place. I went to the living room and took down the smoke detector above the couch. Same thing. No battery. No sensor. A camera. Then the one in the hallway. Camera. Then the one by the kitchen. Camera. Every single smoke detector was fake. Every single one had a hidden camera inside. Emily stood in the bedroom doorway, pale and shaking. How long were they watching us? I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. And because I was afraid the answer was, the entire time. I opened the rental app and messaged Daniel. We found hidden cameras in the cabin. We are leaving. Do not contact us except through the app. The message showed as sent. But not delivered. No service. Of course. The cabin had no Wi-Fi, and our phones had been useless since the last stretch of road. I told Emily to get dressed and pack everything. Fast. While she threw our clothes into bags, I searched the bathroom. At first I didn't see anything. No smoke detector. No obvious device. Then I noticed the air freshener. It was one of those automatic spray things mounted high on the wall. Except it was pointed toward the shower. My hands actually started sweating before I touched it. I pulled it off the wall. Behind the plastic cover was another lens. This one was smaller. Emily heard me swear from the bedroom. What? Don't come in here. But she did. She saw what I was holding. Her eyes filled with tears. No. No, no, no. I felt sick. Not scared anymore. Sick. Violated. Angry in a way I can't explain. Someone hadn't just hidden cameras in the cabin. Someone had carefully chosen where to point them. The bed. The couch. The kitchen. The shower. This wasn't security. This was deliberate. We finished packing in less than 5 minutes. I grabbed the fake devices I'd already removed and shoved them into a grocery bag. I figured we needed proof. Then we rushed outside. And that's when things got worse. My truck wouldn't start. I turned the key. Nothing. Not even a click. I tried again. Dead. Emily stood beside the passenger door, clutching her backpack. Please tell me you're joking. I popped the hood. The battery terminals were disconnected. Not loose. Disconnected. Someone had removed the nuts and tucked the cables carefully to the side. For a moment, I just stared. Then I looked toward the trees. The forest around the cabin was completely still. But it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt watched. I don't think I've ever experienced fear the way I did in that moment. Not the kind that makes you scream. The kind that quietly rewires your brain. 1 second you're thinking logically. The next, every tree looks like someone hiding behind it. Every shadow feels alive. I slammed the hood shut and looked around the clearing. Nothing. Just the cabin. The lake. The endless wall of pine trees surrounding us on every side. Emily kept whispering the same question. What do we do? I'll reconnect the battery. I tried to sound calm. I wasn't. The cables had been tucked underneath a plastic cover, almost like whoever disconnected them wanted to make sure I wouldn't notice right away. It took less than a minute to reconnect everything. When I turned the key again, the engine started immediately. That should have made me feel better. Instead, it made me feel worse. Because it meant someone had been close enough to our truck while we slept. Close enough to open the hood. Close enough to work without waking us. Close enough to leave without making a sound. Emily climbed into the passenger seat before I even closed the hood. Just drive. I nodded. I threw the grocery bag with the fake smoke detectors onto the back seat and backed out of the driveway. Or at least I tried to. About 50 yards from the cabin, the narrow dirt road curved through the trees. Right in the middle of the road. A large pine had fallen across it. Fresh. Green needles. Bright orange wood exposed where the trunk had split. It hadn't been there yesterday. I stopped the truck. Neither of us spoke. The tree wasn't huge. But it was much too large to drive over. I got out carefully. The trunk looked wrong. It hadn't snapped naturally. The cut was clean. Almost perfectly horizontal. Someone had cut through most of it with a chainsaw before pushing it over. I crouched beside the stump. Fresh sawdust. Still dry. Emily stayed inside the truck. Can we move it? I shook my head. Not without equipment. It was impossible. We reversed all the way back to the cabin. Neither of us wanted to. But there wasn't another road. Back at the clearing, I parked facing the driveway in case we needed to leave quickly. Emily looked at me. What if they're still here? I didn't answer immediately. Because I'd been thinking the exact same thing. Whoever installed those cameras obviously knew the cabin. They probably owned it. Or managed it. Or had access somehow. But disconnecting my truck? Blocking the road? That wasn't someone checking recordings from another city. That was someone nearby. Watching us in real time. I grabbed the tire iron from behind the driver's seat. Not because I thought it'd help much. Just because having something in my hands felt better than having nothing. We're checking the property. Emily stared at me. Are you serious? If somebody's out here, I want to know. I want to leave. So do I. We walked together, staying close to the cabin. The silence from yesterday felt completely different now. Before, it had been peaceful. Now it felt unnatural. Like the forest itself was holding its breath. Behind the cabin there was an old woodshed. The door hung slightly open. I stepped closer. Inside were neatly stacked logs. An axe. A shovel. Gasoline cans. Nothing unusual. Until I noticed muddy footprints. Fresh ones. They weren't ours. The treads were deeper. Larger. Heavy work boots. They entered the shed. But they didn't leave. I frowned. That's impossible. Emily looked down too. What? The prints. She followed them with her eyes. They stopped at the back wall. No return prints. No side exit. Nothing. Just. Gone. I walked to the rear wall and knocked on it. Solid. Mostly. Except for one section. Thunk. 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 Hollow. I looked closer. The wood paneling was newer than everything around it. Different screws. Different stain. Someone had replaced it recently. Using the tire iron, I pried one corner loose. The panel shifted immediately. Behind it was a narrow opening. Maybe 3 feet wide. A hidden passage. Cold air drifted out. Emily grabbed my arm. No. We need to know. No, we don't. She was right. Every instinct told me to close it and walk away. Instead, I shined my flashlight inside. The passage led underground. Concrete steps disappeared into darkness. There were electrical cables running down the wall. Brand new cables. Not old. Not abandoned. Recently installed. I felt every hair on my arm stand up. Because suddenly the hidden cameras made sense. Those wires had to go somewhere. Someone hadn't just hidden cameras. Someone had built an entire observation system. Beneath the cabin. Then. We heard it. A metallic sound. Very faint. Coming from somewhere below us. Like a chair scraping across a concrete floor. Emily whispered, barely loud enough to hear. Someone's down there. Neither of us moved. Then another sound. Footsteps. Slow. Steady. Coming toward the stairs. I slammed the wooden panel shut so hard it echoed through the shed. Run. We sprinted back toward the cabin. Halfway there, I looked over my shoulder. The shed door was slowly opening. By itself. Or by someone pushing it from the inside. I couldn't tell which. I didn't wait to find out. We ran faster. By the time we reached the porch, both of us were out of breath. I shoved Emily inside and locked the front door behind us. It was ridiculous, really. A standard wooden cabin door with a simple deadbolt wasn't going to stop someone determined to get in. But locking it was instinct. It made us feel like we had some kind of control. We didn't. Emily peeked through the front window. I don't see anyone. Keep watching. I moved from window to window, pulling every curtain closed. Yesterday we'd left them wide open to enjoy the view. Now every window felt like a display case. Every uncovered inch of glass made me feel exposed. The cabin suddenly seemed much smaller. The walls felt thinner. The silence felt heavier. I grabbed my phone again. Still no signal. I walked to every room. Nothing. Not even one bar. Emily tried hers. Same result. Then she remembered something. What about the emergency radio? What radio? In the kitchen. The listing said there was one in case of storms. We tore through the cabinets until we found it. A yellow hand crank emergency radio. I flipped it on. Static. I switched frequencies. More static. Finally, a weather broadcast came through. Temperatures expected to drop below freezing overnight. At least it worked. I hit the emergency alert button. Nothing happened. Then I noticed the label. Weather only. No transmission capability. It could receive. It couldn't send. I set it down harder than I meant to. Emily sat on the couch, hugging her knees. What if they cut the road because they know we found the cameras? I've been thinking the same thing. She looked at me. What if they don't want us to leave? Neither of us said anything after that. Because once the idea existed, neither of us could convince ourselves it wasn't true. About 20 minutes passed. Nothing happened. No footsteps. No voices. No vehicles. Eventually I started wondering if we'd imagined the sounds under the shed. Stress does strange things. Maybe the footsteps had been an animal. Maybe the door hadn't opened. Maybe. Knock. 3 slow knocks. Not loud. Just enough to freeze both of us. Knock. 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 Emily grabbed my arm so tightly her nails dug into my skin. Neither of us moved. Then a man's voice came through the door. Hello? Friendly. Calm. Middle-aged. I saw your truck. No response from us. You folks all right in there? Still nothing. The voice continued. My name's Tom. I own the property about a mile east. I noticed the tree across the road. I figured you might need a chainsaw. Emily mouthed one word. Don't. I stayed silent. The man waited. Then laughed softly. I know this probably sounds suspicious. You rented Daniel's place, didn't you? That got my attention. He knew the owner's name. He continued. Listen. I don't want to stand on your porch all day. But if you're staying here, don't go into the woods after dark. Then. Footsteps. Walking away. We waited nearly 5 minutes before I looked outside. The porch was empty. No truck. No ATV. No chainsaw. No person. Just a muddy set of boot prints leading away from the cabin. I followed them with my eyes. They disappeared into the trees. Emily whispered. Did he even have a vehicle? I don't know. A mile? He would have had to walk. Neither of us liked that answer. I finally opened the door. The air outside felt colder than before. The boot prints were fresh. Deep. The same tread pattern we'd seen in the woodshed. Exactly the same. I backed into the cabin and locked the door again. Emily's face went white. It's him. Maybe. No. She pointed through the window. The footprints. The same boots. I looked again. She was right. Every groove matched. Which meant one of two things. Either Tom had been inside that shed. Or whoever had been inside the shed had just stood on our porch. Neither option made me feel any better. As the afternoon dragged on, we debated what to do. Wait until morning? Walk to town? Stay hidden? Try to move the tree ourselves? Every option felt dangerous. Around 4 o'clock, clouds rolled in. The cabin grew darker. The forest disappeared behind sheets of rain. Then, without warning, the lights went out. Every single one. The refrigerator stopped humming. The heater died. The cabin fell into complete silence. Emily looked at me. Power outage? I wanted to believe that. Until I remembered something. The cameras. The underground cables. Someone had installed electricity beneath the cabin. Someone maintained this place. And someone, if they wanted to, could probably turn the power off whenever they felt like it. Then we heard another sound. Not outside. Inside. Very faint. Beneath the floor. A dull mechanical hum. Like a generator. Or an elevator. Something under the cabin had just turned on. The sound lasted maybe 5 seconds. Then it stopped. Neither of us spoke. We were both staring at the floor. It hadn't come from outside. It hadn't come from the walls. It came from directly beneath our feet. Emily backed away from the center of the living room. What was that? I don't know. It was a lie. I had a pretty good idea. Whatever was hidden under the woodshed probably extended beneath the cabin. Those cameras had to connect somewhere. Power. Storage. Monitors. Someone had built an entire system. And now, somehow, it had just come alive. I grabbed the flashlight from the kitchen drawer. The beam cut through the dark cabin. The battery was full. Good. I remembered seeing a hatch outside when we'd arrived. One of those metal crawlspace doors built into the foundation. At the time I'd assumed it led to plumbing. Now I wasn't so sure. Emily immediately realized what I was thinking. No. I'm just looking. No, you're not. You want to go under the cabin. If somebody's down there. They want you to go down there. Her voice cracked. For the first time since we'd arrived, she was crying. Not hysterically. Just quietly. The kind of crying that comes after your body has been running on adrenaline for too long. I sat beside her. We're getting out of here. How? I don't know yet. She leaned against my shoulder. I just want to go home. So do I. For almost an hour we stayed inside. Nothing happened. No knocking. No footsteps. No voices. Eventually I started convincing myself that whoever was out there had left. Maybe they knew we'd found the cameras and decided we weren't worth the risk. Maybe. Then Emily frowned. Do you smell that? I sniffed the air. At first. Nothing. Then it hit me. Smoke. Not from the fireplace. Plastic. Burning plastic. I stood up immediately. It's electrical. The smell grew stronger by the second. We searched every room. Kitchen. Bedroom. Bathroom. Nothing. Then I noticed a thin stream of gray smoke drifting from the hallway ceiling. The fake smoke detector. The one I'd removed earlier. The hole where the hidden camera had been. Smoke was pouring out of it. What the hell? I climbed onto the chair again. The flashlight revealed melted insulation around the wires hidden inside the wall. Tiny orange sparks flickered in the darkness. Someone had activated something. Or overloaded it. Either way. The wall was about to catch fire. Water. Emily ran to the kitchen. I grabbed the fire extinguisher mounted beside the refrigerator. Thankfully it was real. I emptied half the extinguisher into the opening. The sparks disappeared. The smoke slowed. For a moment, everything was quiet again. Then, a loud click echoed somewhere beneath the floor. Immediately followed by another. And another. Like heavy locks disengaging. Clunk. 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 Emily stared at me. What was that? I didn't answer. Because I already knew. The sounds weren't inside the walls. They were below us. Then we heard footsteps. Not one person. Several. Moving underneath the cabin. Slowly. Methodically. The floorboards vibrated just enough that we could feel them. Someone walked from one end of the cabin to the other. Stopped. Then another set of footsteps. Then another. At least 3 people. Maybe more. Emily covered her mouth to stop herself from making a sound. I turned off the flashlight. Every light source. The cabin became almost completely dark except for the fading daylight leaking through tiny gaps in the curtains. The footsteps continued. One of them stopped directly beneath the living room. Then, a soft knock. From below. 3 knocks. Directly under our feet. Knock. 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 My blood turned to ice. Whoever it was knew exactly where we were standing. Emily leaned close enough that I could barely hear her whisper. They know. I nodded. Yes. They knew. And then a calm male voice came through the floor. Muffled by the wood. But perfectly understandable. You should have just enjoyed your vacation. The cabin fell completely silent. Even the forest outside seemed dead. The voice spoke again. No one would have gotten hurt. Neither of us breathed. Then came the final sentence. You looked behind the walls. A long pause. That was a mistake. I don't remember making the decision. My body just reacted. I grabbed Emily's hand. We're leaving. The road. We're not taking the road. What? We're going through the woods. She stared at me like I was insane. Maybe I was. But staying in that cabin had just become impossible. Because whoever was underneath us was no longer pretending they weren't there. The rain had slowed to a drizzle by the time we made our decision. I stuffed everything we absolutely needed into one backpack. Car keys. Wallet. Phones. Flashlight. A bottle of water. The grocery bag with the fake smoke detectors. Nothing else mattered. Our clothes. The food. The luggage. Forget it. If we made it out alive, we could replace all of it. Emily pulled on her hiking boots with shaking hands. You really think we can walk out? I think we have a better chance than staying here. The map we'd downloaded before leaving Seattle showed a Forest Service road a few miles east of the cabin. If we could reach it, eventually we'd find people. That was the plan. At least, it was the only one we had. I unlocked the back door as quietly as I could. The air outside was freezing. Rain dripped steadily from the pine branches. The woods behind the cabin looked almost black. I listened. Nothing. No voices. No footsteps. No generators. Just water falling through the trees. I squeezed Emily's hand. Ready? She nodded. We stepped off the porch and disappeared into the forest. For the first 10 minutes, everything went surprisingly well. The ground was soft with wet pine needles. The flashlight stayed off. We didn't want anyone seeing us. Instead, we moved slowly through the darkness, letting our eyes adjust. The cabin disappeared behind us. Then the lake. Soon there was nothing except trees. I checked the compass on my watch every few minutes. East. Just keep moving east. Neither of us spoke. The only sounds were our footsteps and our breathing. Then Emily suddenly froze. What? She pointed ahead. A strip of bright orange ribbon was tied around a tree. Survey tape. Fresh. I walked closer. Another ribbon. Then another. They formed a line through the woods. Almost like someone had marked a trail. Except they were leading directly back toward the cabin. I looked around. There were dozens of them. Some old. Some brand new. Emily whispered. Do you think they're trail markers? No. How do you know? Because the ribbons weren't numbered. There were no survey stakes. No painted trees. Just random strips of tape at eye level. Placed exactly where someone walking through the woods would notice them. Almost like breadcrumbs. Someone wanted people to follow them. We turned south instead. For another 20 minutes, we hiked through thick brush. Branches tore at our jackets. Mud covered our boots. I kept checking the compass. East. Still east. Eventually we crossed a shallow creek. The water was freezing. Emily nearly slipped climbing the opposite bank. When we reached the top, we both stopped. There was another orange ribbon. Wrapped around the tree directly in front of us. Impossible. We had changed direction completely. We should have been nowhere near the first trail. I looked behind us. Nothing. No cabin. No landmarks. Yet somehow, the ribbons had found us again. Emily's breathing became shallow. I don't like this. We keep moving. No. She grabbed my arm. Look. At first I didn't understand. Then I saw them. Footprints. Fresh boot prints in the mud. Not ours. They were heading in the same direction we were. Not behind us. Ahead of us. Someone had walked this exact route before we got here. Recently. The rain hadn't washed them away. I crouched beside one. Size 11 or 12. Heavy work boot. Deep tread. Exactly like the prints near the woodshed. The same person. Emily whispered. He's in front of us. Or they are. The realization hit me all at once. We weren't escaping someone chasing us. Someone had anticipated where we'd go. My pulse pounded in my ears. Then, a light appeared between the trees. Far away. Maybe 200 yards. White. Steady. Not moving. Emily smiled for the first time in hours. A house? Maybe. Or maybe a vehicle. Hope overpowered caution. We started moving toward it. The light grew brighter. Eventually we reached a small clearing. In the center stood another cabin. Almost identical to the first one. Same porch. Same roof. Same faded green paint. Even the same style of rocking chair. Only this cabin looked abandoned. Half the windows were boarded up. One hung open. The porch steps sagged. The front door stood slightly ajar. The light was coming from inside. Neither of us said a word. Because there was only one explanation that made any sense. This wasn't the only cabin. And suddenly I couldn't stop wondering. How many others were hidden in these woods? For almost a full minute, neither of us moved. The abandoned cabin sat in complete silence. Rain dripped from the roof. The light inside never flickered. It just glowed steadily through the cracked front window. Emily finally whispered. "We're not going in there." "I know." But I couldn't stop staring. The place looked like a copy of the cabin we'd rented. Same floor plan. Same porch swing. Even the same black metal lantern hanging beside the door. It was like someone had built two identical cabins years apart. Only one had been left to rot. Then I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. The front door wasn't simply open. It was held open. A small rock had been wedged beneath it. Like someone expected visitors. "We're leaving," Emily said. I nodded. We turned away from the cabin and continued east. Or at least we tried to. A man's voice echoed through the trees. "Wrong direction." We both froze. The voice wasn't loud. It wasn't yelling. It sounded conversational. Like someone giving directions to lost hikers. I spun toward the sound. Nothing. Only trees. Then the voice came again. Closer this time. "You'll end up back at the lake." Emily grabbed my arm so hard it hurt. "Don't answer." I wasn't planning to. The flashlight inside the abandoned cabin suddenly went out. Darkness swallowed the clearing. For several seconds there was absolute silence. Then we heard footsteps. Crunch. 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 Not running. Walking. Somewhere behind the cabin. I couldn't see anyone. But I could hear them circling. One person. Maybe more. Emily whispered. "We have to go." We started walking as quietly as possible. The footsteps continued. Always matching our pace. Never getting closer. Never falling behind. Just following. After about 10 minutes I looked back. Nothing. Another 5 minutes. Still nothing. Eventually the footsteps stopped. I wanted to believe we'd lost whoever it was. Then my phone vibrated. I nearly dropped it. No signal. No missed calls. Just a notification. The battery had reached 20%. I almost laughed from the relief. Then I realized. The vibration hadn't come from my phone. It came from the backpack. I unzipped it. The grocery bag. Inside were the fake smoke detectors I'd ripped off the ceiling. One of them was blinking. A tiny blue light. Slow. Steady. Every 2 seconds. Blink. 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 Emily stared. "What is that?" I turned it over. The plastic casing had cracked when I'd thrown it into the bag earlier. Inside, beneath the fake smoke detector shell, was much more than a camera. There was a small circuit board. A lithium battery. A tiny antenna. And something that looked very familiar. A GPS module. "Oh." I whispered. Emily looked confused. "What?" "It isn't just a camera." "What is it?" It's transmitting. The blinking lights suddenly made perfect sense. I felt like the biggest idiot on earth. I'd taken their equipment. And carried it with us. The entire time. Every step we'd taken through the forest. They could probably see exactly where we were. Emily's face drained of color. Throw it away. I didn't hesitate. I hurled the grocery bag as far into the trees as I could. The plastic disappeared into the darkness. We waited. Nothing happened. Then, somewhere far behind us. A whistle. Short. Sharp. Almost immediately. Another whistle answered from a different direction. Then another. 3 separate locations. Emily looked at me in horror. They're talking to each other. I didn't answer. Because I was counting. 1 whistle behind us. 1 somewhere to our left. 1 much farther ahead. Whether it was 3 people or more, I didn't know. But they were spread out. Covering the forest. We ran. Branches whipped against our faces. Mud splashed up our legs. Neither of us cared any more about staying quiet. Survival had become the only goal. For nearly 15 minutes we sprinted downhill until my lungs felt like they were on fire. Then we heard something completely unexpected. An engine. Not a truck. Smaller. An ATV. Close. Very close. Its headlights flashed between the trees before disappearing again. The driver wasn't using a steady beam. He was sweeping the forest. Searching. Emily stumbled over a fallen log. I pulled her up before she could scream. The ATV engine idled less than 50 yards away. Then shut off. Silence. Complete silence. That was somehow even worse. Because whoever had been driving was now on foot. And somewhere in the darkness, they had started looking for us. We stayed perfectly still. I could hear Emily trying not to breathe. Somewhere ahead, a branch snapped. Not from an animal. Too heavy. Too deliberate. Then another snap. Closer. I slowly crouched behind a fallen cedar, pulling Emily down beside me. The forest was so dark that I could barely see my own hands. The only light came from the clouds drifting across a half-hidden moon. 5 minutes passed. Maybe 10. Time didn't feel real anymore. Then we heard a man's voice. Quiet. Calm. So. Another pause. Where'd you two go? He wasn't shouting. He wasn't calling for help. He sounded amused. Like this was a game he'd played before. I felt Emily trembling beside me. The footsteps started again. Slow. Crunch. 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 They moved past us. Close enough that I could smell cigarette smoke. I caught the outline of a man no more than 20 feet away. Tall. Baseball cap. Dark rain jacket. Flashlight hanging loosely from one hand. He wasn't scanning the woods anymore. He already knew roughly where we were. He was just narrowing it down. Then, somewhere in the distance, a loud truck horn echoed through the valley. One long blast. The man froze. Another horn. This time closer. His flashlight switched off instantly. For the first time all day, I heard him sound irritated. Damn it. He turned and disappeared into the trees at a jog. A few seconds later the ATV engine roared back to life. It sped away. Fast. I waited another full minute before whispering. I think he's gone. Emily shook her head. Don't move yet. So we didn't. Nearly 15 minutes passed before we heard voices. Different voices. Loud. Confused. Someone yelled. "Hello?" Another shouted. "Anybody out here?" This time I answered. "Help." My own voice cracked. "We're over here." Flashlights immediately turned toward us. Within a minute, 3 men wearing orange hunting vests reached our position. They looked just as surprised as we were. The oldest one lowered his rifle. "What in God's name are you two doing out here?" I don't remember everything I said. It came out in pieces. Cabin. Cameras. Underground room. Someone chasing us. Blocked road. Hidden passage. The hunters exchanged nervous looks. Finally one of them interrupted. "Easy. Start from the beginning." They led us back to their pickup truck parked on an old logging trail we'd somehow wandered onto without realizing it. For the first time in nearly 12 hours. I felt safe. One of the hunters had a satellite phone. He called the sheriff immediately. Within 45 minutes, deputies arrived. They separated Emily and me, took our statements, photographed the fake smoke detectors, and drove us back toward the cabin. Or at least, toward where the cabin should have been. The roadblock was gone. The freshly cut tree had disappeared. When we reached the property, every light was off. The front door stood wide open. Inside, the cabin had been emptied. Furniture gone. Kitchen empty. Bedrooms stripped. No cameras. No fake smoke detectors. No fingerprints. Even the mattress was missing. It looked abandoned for years. One deputy actually asked if we were certain we had the correct address. I handed him the rental confirmation on my phone. Same address. Same GPS coordinates. Same place. They searched the woodshed. The hidden panel I'd opened earlier had vanished. In its place was a solid wall of weathered lumber. No doorway. No stairs. Ground-penetrating radar was brought in 2 days later. According to the sheriff's office, they found no underground rooms beneath the shed. No tunnels. Nothing. The rental listing disappeared from the app before sunrise the next morning. Daniel's profile no longer existed. The payment had gone through a shell company registered in another state. The bank account was closed less than 24 hours after our stay. The detectives later admitted they couldn't identify who actually owned the property. As for Tom, no one in the nearest town knew anyone by that name living in the area. The hunters did tell investigators one interesting thing. Apparently there had been rumors for years about people discovering strange cabins deep in those woods. Hunters. Backpackers. Even a survey crew once reported seeing cabins that didn't appear on county maps. Whenever deputies investigated, they never found them. Emily couldn't sleep without the lights on for months. She eventually started therapy. I probably should have too. We broke up about a year later. Not because we stopped loving each other. Trauma just changes people. Every now and then one of us still texts the other. Usually around October. Just to make sure the other one's okay. As for me, I never stay in isolated vacation rentals anymore. Hotels. Motels. Crowded campgrounds. Anywhere with other people nearby. Sometimes friends ask why. I usually laugh it off. It's easier than telling them the truth. But there is one thing I never told the police. When I emptied my pockets that night at the motel, there was something I didn't recognize. A small laminated card. White. No fingerprints. No writing except 6 printed words. Thank you for staying with us. There wasn't a name. No logo. No address. Just those words. I still have that card. Every few months, I convince myself I'm finally going to throw it away. But I never do. Because part of me still wonders. If someone managed to slip that card into my jacket pocket while we were running through the woods, how close did they actually get? And if they got that close, how do I know they ever really stopped watching?